Hello, and welcome to my mini harmonica masterclass, 7 underused, wildly effective harmonica hacks. My name is Bryn Scott Grimes, and I'm a professional harmonica player here to help you become the best player you can possibly be. If you've ever wondered what it feels like to step into the spotlight, rip a harmonica solo, landing all of those phrases you practiced for weeks or even months to perfect, and have the audience erupt into a near deafening applause, you need to watch this masterclass all the way to the end. The truth is, you could practice till you're blue in the face, but without knowing these hacks, you could spend 5, 10, 20, 50 times as long trying to learn the same thing, or just never get there at all because you're missing a few pieces of the musical harmonica puzzle. Before we get started, let me just introduce myself so you're aware of my credentials and my story and how it relates to this masterclass. Now, despite making a living with my breath now as a professional harmonica player, breathing did not always come easy for me. In fact, I was born with severe asthma and spent a great deal of my childhood struggling to inhale. I had frequent asthma attacks and had to carry my puffers with me everywhere I went. I even had an attack in grade 5 that almost killed me, putting me in the hospital for 3 days. That being said, if I can make the transition from breathing impaired to breathing empowered, you certainly can. With enough dedication, motivation, and guidance, you can become an incredible jaw-dropping harmonica player who steals the show every time. In addition to that, I have a BA honors in music, 17 years playing experience, and over a decade teaching experience. In fact, I've already taught over 3,000 one-on-one, 1-hour-long harmonica lessons. And I also have numerous session harmonica credits on feature films, shorts, documentaries, and other artists' albums. I recently won first place in the instrumental category for the 2024 International Charleston Music Competition, and I was awarded silver in the Originality Creativity category at the 2024 Global Music Awards for my harmonica magnum opus song, Mr. Breathe, which combines 4 different diatonic harmonicas with different tunings into one epic genre-blending banger. I'm also an artist and have performed solo as a sideman and as a duo as a virtuoso harmonica player and singer-songwriter at festivals, weddings, special events, bars, cafes, private parties, and beyond. I also release my own original songs and harmonica and guitar instrumentals on all streaming services. Needless to say, you're in good hands, and I'm excited to pass on my knowledge right here to you that I've spent decades acquiring. Without further ado, time to breathe in the good stuff. Let's get started. Hack number 1. Learn to sing from memory what you want to play on your harmonica and ear train pitch using your voice. Have you ever noticed that nearly all of the best harmonica players in history were also singers? Well, you don't have to become a singer per se, but you do have to learn how to use your voice with accurate pitch to be a good harmonica player. Think of it like a tool. If all you ever do is try and judge pitch from inside your head, there's no true way of knowing whether you're correct or not. Unlike the piano or guitar, whose notes are laid out for you in neat little predetermined keys or frets, the diatonic harmonica has literally half of its notes hidden in pitch variable places. This means that to be able to play well and achieve clear bends and overblows and overdraws, and bendable versions of those, you need to be able to check how accurate your pitch is. Can you do this with a tuner or a harmonica app? Kind of, but they're kind of like crutches. You can't really rely on these things while you're playing. They're only good for like intermittently checking one note at a time when you're practicing. They're more like training wheels that really should be weaned off of as soon as humanly possible. What you really want to use is your own voice to be able to check semitones and other intervals and to bridge between the melody you're trying to transfer into your harmonica from your musical mind. If you can't sing on pitch or match pitches with your voice accurately, chances are you will not be able to tell if you're playing something with correct pitch on the harmonica either. If you're a beginner, some of the best songs you can learn are actually songs that you already know how to sing. Simple melodies like Happy Birthday or your country's national anthem. This is because you'll know when you're playing it incorrectly because you're already familiar with the melody because you've sang it 1,000 times. By the way, you could also hum or whistle rather than sing, although I think that singing has the most potential. If you approach new songs with a similar approach, learning to memorize and sing the melody first with accurate pitch it will be 10 times easier when you go and learn it on your harmonica. You won't need to constantly check back and forth with the song on Spotify or YouTube. Your musical mind and ear will combine with your voice to form the ultimate melodic fact check in real time. Another reason why it's good to use your voice is because you can't bend or slide between notes on a piano or a lot of other instruments like you can with harmonica and the human voice. You also can't sing in 8-octave range like you can play on a piano. Most human voices usually have 2 to 3 octave range, which is very similar to the range of a harmonica. There also aren't pitch notches in your voice. You have to learn how to hold pitches at specific frequencies, just like with bent notes on the harmonica. And furthermore, you can't see what you're doing when you sing or play harmonica. You can't look at your fingers, you can't look at the fretboard. You have to learn by feel and by listening. And once again, that's very similar to the challenge you face as a harmonica player. So all of these similarities between the voice and the harmonica mean that as you improve and use your voice, you're simultaneously developing the same musical skills for harmonica playing, but you can access your voice from anywhere. If you want a really basic way to start learning how to use your voice, I would pull up a virtual piano, or if you have a keyboard, that's great, or a piano at home, but you can pull up a virtual piano on Google and just play a pitch and then try and sing it, and then play a different pitch and try and sing it, and really give yourself time. Make sure that you are actually able to match that pitch. Okay, and as you work on that skill, that's going to sort of hone your voice to be able to match and recognize pitches, and that's going to transfer over to your harmonica playing big time. Hack number 2. Learn how to tongue block on at least one side of your tongue. Now, even if you've heard of and have tried tongue blocking before and failed, I want you to watch this and learn a little bit more about it before you dismiss it. There are some subtle differences in the types of tongue blocking that can make all the difference. If you haven't heard of tongue blocking, simply put, tongue blocking means that you put the tip of your tongue into one of the holes to the left or the right of the hole that you want to play. Now, generally speaking, there are 2 ways to tongue block. One, where you block one hole and you play the hole directly adjacent. For example, playing a 4 with your tongue in the 3. I usually call that a 1-to-1 ratio block. The second version is where you block 2 holes and you play one of the holes to the left or the right. Generally speaking, 1-to-1 ratio versus that second one, which is 2-to-1 ratio, is superior. So 1-to-1 ratio is better if you can do it for numerous reasons. That being said, some people are not able, due to their tongue shape, to do 1-to-1 ratio, in which case 2-to-1 is better than nothing. The reason why 1-to-1 ratio blocking is better is because it allows you to also do tongue switching, corner switching, octaves, and tongue slaps a lot more easily, and generally it's less to keep track of and think about, rather than always having to calculate what is 2 holes away from the target playing note. I should also say that if you're not aware of it already, tongue blocking is the alternative to pucker playing. And pucker playing is where you play a single note just with forming your lips into a very small shape, whereas tongue blocking, as you can see, uses your actual tongue on the comb. The main advantages of tongue blocking are vast. First of all, it allows you to do articulations that involve your tongue, like a tongue slap. It also allows you to play octaves and other intervals, and allows you to do tongue switching, where you shift your tongue between 2 adjacent holes to be able to play 3 notes or 3 holes apart much more quickly. It also allows you to do corner switching, where you play on either side of your tongue without having to move your tongue from a hole, allowing you to play faster notes that are further apart, like a 1 and a 4 exhale, for example. It also allows you to do tongue flutters and other cool tongue tricks, so there are a lot of advantages to it overall. Despite tongue blocking's many advantages, its success does largely depend on the shape of your actual tongue, which is genetic. So that means for some individuals, it may not be possible, or it may always feel and sound like a mess. The ideal tongue blocking tongue is narrow at the tip and allows you to curl upwards, forming an almost spoon-like shape to allow space for more air in the middle of the mouth. If your tongue is wide at the tip or not flexible or controllable enough to curl upwards at the end and achieve a crystal clear, full-sounding single note tone, then you may actually need to stick with pucker. That being said, most people are able to tongue block. It's been pretty rare that I've found a student where they're not able to do it at all. It's just that it varies quite a bit from student to student how comfortable the technique is. But you definitely want to give it a good solid 2, 3, 4 weeks to try it first, and to try different variations before dismissing it and just going with pucker. It's important when you're first learning tongue blocking to experiment with blocking on both sides of your target hole. And a lot of people miss this. Just like one hand being dominant for most people are also left or right mouthed, making it feel more comfortable blocking on one side versus the other. In an ideal world, you'll be able to block on both sides, or at least be able to do one type of ratio on each side. So, to give tongue blocking an honest attempt, you really need to try 1-to-1 ratio blocking on the left, 1-to-1 ratio blocking on the right, 1-to-2 ratio blocking on the left, and 1-to-2 ratio blocking on the right. Give each of those a good solid couple of weeks or even a couple months before calling it quits, and you will be way ahead of the game. Here are a couple tongue blocking tips. Number one is you need to drop your jaw down further than you normally would when you're doing pucker to create more space for air in the middle of your mouth. This is because your tongue is in the middle of your mouth rather than at the bottom where it usually hangs out for pucker, which means you need more vertical space for the air to move, or your tone is going to sound obstructed, thin, draggy, leaky, or it's going to sound like you're trying to say the word theory but you can't get the word out. Another tip is to keep your tongue centered from left to right in your mouth, so keeping your tongue in the center regardless of which side you block on. The note that you'll play will actually be slightly off-center instead. A slight off-center tongue is okay, but not way off to the side. In other words, tongue blocking on the left doesn't mean having your tongue in the left corner of your mouth. It means having your tongue in the middle, but to the left of the hole that you want to play, which would be slightly to the right. Another tip is to try and curl the tip of your tongue slightly up, like I mentioned before. So it's pointing up kind of 45 degrees, up towards the top reed plate and cover plate of the harmonica rather than just sticking it straight in. What you absolutely don't want to do is let your tongue point down like this. Kind of like a lazy tongue, you don't want to do that. And that's because this tends to widen the tongue, and it also, if you see pink, like right there, when I go like this, all you see is pink, which means that's what the air is hitting. It's coming in and it's just hitting your pink tongue. Instead, you want to try this. I'm pointing my tongue up and you can see black behind the pink tip, and that means that there's space for the air. The last tip here is to try and keep space for air in between your tongue, your teeth, and even the bottom under your tongue. Imagine there's like a moat of air around your tongue so that the only thing touching your tongue is the hole at the tip of your tongue. A lot of people jam things too close together, and once again, it just sounds like a mess, and it's gonna feel very laborsome. Okay, so you need to open up, drop your jaw, create more vertical space. And one more thing I should mention is you want to keep your lips floured outwards like this, like flower petals, right? You definitely don't want to have them turning in. And it's also good to basically keep the harmonica on the wet part of your inner lip. And you'll notice here, our lips have sort of the outer lip, and then there's a line inside where it becomes wet. That's the inside of your mouth. That's the part you actually want on the cover plates. Okay, so go ahead and give that a good solid try, and that's gonna definitely help you out. Hack number 3, learn how to use one breath for double notes and playing multiple adjacent notes in a row that are in the same breathing direction. One of the biggest rookie mistakes is using one breath for each note, rather than playing efficiently using the least number of breaths per song, which is not only easier in the long run, but it also sounds way better. One of the easiest ways that you can improve the flow of your harmonica playing is by using the least number of breaths per song, which is the most efficient and it sounds the best. Here's a conventional tab, for example, for Happy Birthday. The typical newbie player will actually use 25 separate start-stop breaths to play this little song, each breath for each note. It's very exhausting and it will also sound very choppy. Instead, one breath for any adjacent notes in the same breathing direction, and one breath plus an articulation like a t or a k sound for any double notes that repeat twice, one after the other. In the Customize tab, the underlines represent notes played with a single breath, and the T's represent possible articulations you can use rather than stopping and starting the airflow for double notes. You have to pay close attention when you try this because a lot of people do not have the level of awareness of their breath to be able to know when they're starting and stopping. So that's why I like to add these into the tabs. It does take practice to develop the ear and the feel for playing properly this way, but regardless, this tip holds true about 98% of the time, regardless of genre, tempo, or key. It's just a golden approach that makes your songs flow so much better. And whatever tabs you use, I also recommend practicing customizing them like I did there with the underlines and the articulations to get in the habit of playing this way until it becomes second nature. Hack number 4, memorize 2 7-letter acronyms and the circle of fifths and never get lost again on the harmonica note layout. There are 2 magic acronyms when combined with the circle of fifths that will allow you to quickly name any natural exhale or inhale on any harmonica key and understand which key to play in for all 12 positions. You'll also know all of the notes for all of the most common major and minor chords and arpeggios as an extra bonus. Not easy, but insanely awesome and useful. Magic acronym number 1, what I call the multi-triad. B, D, F, A, C, E, G. With only 7 letters, memorizing this acronym is as easy as memorizing a phone number. I recommend making up your own acronym that's easy for you to remember, but here's one that you could use just as an example. Because donkeys fall accidentally, consider extra grass. Each one of those words lines up with each letter in the acronym. Now, the reason why this acronym is important is because it contains the letter order of all 12 major and minor triads. Triads are chords and also happen to be what standard tuned harmonicas are tuned to, with a repeating 3-note pattern on the exhales. For example, the notes of the exhales on a C harmonica are C, E, G, C, E, G, C, E, G, C. Notice how C, E, G is at the end of the acronym. How about a G harmonica? We've got G, B, D, G, B, D, G, B, D, G. You'll notice that with this one, it follows the acronym from G back to the beginning of the acronym where B and D are. Now, the only thing missing from this acronym are the sharps and flats, which we'll address next. But even on harmonicas that have sharps and flats, the letter order is still the same as in this acronym. For example, on a D harmonica, the exhales are D, F sharp A, D, F sharp A, D, F sharp A, D. Again, the DFA is in the acronym, which is the basis of this, and all you have to do is know where to put the sharp. This multi-triad acronym is also detectable and useful for holes 3 to 10 on the DAWs, with a 4-note repeating pattern. For example, on a C harmonica, the notes starting from the 3 inhale are BDFA, BDFA, which evidently is the 4 beginning notes of this acronym. On a G harmonica, it would be F sharp A, C, E, F sharp A, C, E. I think you get the idea. Okay, now let's discuss how you can always know which sharps and flats to include with each key. To do this, you need to memorize a second acronym and the circle of fifths, which are related, so it's a good idea to try and memorize them in tandem. The second acronym is as follows: F, C, G, D, A, E, B. Often taught with the sentence, Father Charles goes down and ends battle. These letters will tell you which sharps and flats to add to each key on the circle of fifths. Now, the circle of fifths will show you which keys to add sharps to and in which order. Now, the cool thing about this acronym is that it's also a palindrome, which means you can say it forwards and backwards and the sentence still makes sense. Forwards, we have Father Charles goes down and ends battle. And backwards, we have battle ends and down goes Charles' father. Why is this relevant? Well, the backwards version spells out the order of flats. Once again, forwards spells out the order for sharps, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp, E sharp, B sharp, and backwards spells the same thing out but for flats, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, C flat, F flat. I know this is a little abstract and a little bit confusing, but let's apply this now to the circle of fifths and it should start making sense. For the circle of fifths, it's easiest to think of it like a clock with 12 p.m., 3 p.m., 6 p.m., 9 p.m., etc. And the key of C is the only one with no sharps or flats, sitting squarely at 12 at the top. As you move to the right, the letter names jump forward 5 letters in the alphabet, thus the circle of fifths. And you add 1 additional sharp for each position, starting at G. That would be clockwise on the circle. Conversely, you add 1 flat starting at F for each position going backwards counterclockwise around the circle. The sharps follow F, C, G, D, A, E, B acronym and the flats follow the acronym backwards. So for example, the key of G is the first key where you add 1 sharp. That sharp is F sharp, as in father. For the key of D, you'd add 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp, etc. For the flats, you add 1 flat starting at F, which would be B flat or battle, as in battle ends and down goes Charles' father. For B flat, you would add 2 flats, B flat and E flat, or battle and ends. Get the idea? The other cool perk of memorizing the circle of fifths that's a bonus is that you can determine any harmonica position simply by picking the letter name corresponding to the harmonica key you have, then counting clockwise to whatever numbered position you're looking for. So for example, on a C harmonica, first position is the key of C. Second position is G, third position is D, etc. On a G harp, G is first, D is second, A is third. It's simple as that, just counting forward the number of positions you're looking for, starting on the key of the harmonica itself. Once again, a fantastic reason to memorize the circle of fifths and be able to visualize the circle of fifths in your mind. Now, once you've memorized the acronyms and the circle of fifths, you can name any of the natural exhales or inhales on any harmonica key with a repeatable, easy 5-step process. Let's try it with a G harmonica. First, you want to ask yourself, how many sharps or flats does G have? Consult the circle of fifths. The answer, as you can see, is 1. The second question is, what are those sharps and flats? For this, you're going to use the FCGDAEB acronym, and the answer is F sharp. Now, to name the exhales, you're going to use the multi-triad acronym, starting on G, including the next 2 letters, GBD. You repeat this 3-note sequence 3 times, and then you add a final G at the top. GBD, 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 G. Now for the inhale letter names. The 1 draw is always the second letter in the harmonica key's scale above the blow. So for a G harmonica, the 1 draw is going to be an A, because A comes after G in the G major scale. The 2-hole draw is always the same letter as the 3-hole blow. So in this case, it's a D, which you've already determined using the multi-triad acronym for the blows. For the remaining inhales from 3 to 10, you just use the multi-triad acronym again, starting from the letter name right before the key of the harmonica itself, otherwise known as the 7th scale degree. So for G, this is an F sharp. And from here, all you do is follow the acronym forward 4 letters. F sharp A C E, F sharp A C E. I know this may seem like a lot at first, and I hope you took some notes, and you can kind of go back and watch this multiple times if you wish, but it is incredible how useful and how informed and free you will be from confusion once you've learned how to do this. It's well worth putting in the time to memorize just these 2 acronyms and a musical clock and this little 5-step process that you can do. A great way to do this, by the way, is by drawing out a straight row of 10 circles for exhales and another 10 beneath it for inhales on a blank piece of paper, and then practicing filling out the correct letter names for each hole for a bunch of different harmonica keys and using this 5-step process. Once you've done that for 12 keys for a couple of weeks, you won't even need to follow the steps anymore because you will have basically memorized the layouts of the harmonicas just from doing the exercises. Hack number 5. Learn to visualize the note layout and the breathing patterns of every phrase using lines and dots. It goes without saying that you can't see what you're doing when you play harmonica, right? That doesn't mean that you don't need your visual senses though. Instead, you need to visualize things in your mind so you don't get lost, and so you don't have to rely on tabs all the time. Using just simple lines and dots, you can learn how to visualize the note layout and the breathing pattern of the lines that you play, helping you memorize and remember songs way faster and much easier, and preventing you from getting lost on the harmonica fretboard. It's very rare, by the way, that great players memorize tabs or a series of numbers. Rather, they memorize breathing patterns that get internalized into their muscle memory, and they often visualize where the notes are in their imagination. Some top-notch players, like Howard Levy, for example, also imagine another instrument's note layout when they're playing, like the piano, whose notes are much more logically laid out than those of a harmonica. One great exercise is to practice playing basic geometric shapes, like these ones, while imagining a blank note layout of all 20 natural exhales and inhales. In these shapes, each dot represents a note, and the line connecting them represents the breathing pattern. Try connecting the dots and playing the shape that it creates in the air with your finger, just like this, and then playing it on your harmonica, right? Just going around like that. Here's an example of what I mean. If I wanted to play a simple square starting on the 1 going clockwise, I would play 1 blow, 2 blow, 2 draw, 1 draw, and then back to the 1 blow. Another example would be, let's say I wanted to play a triangle and started on the 2 exhale. I would play 2 exhale, 3 exhale, 4 exhale, and then 3 inhale for the tip of the bottom of the triangle, and then back to 2 exhale. Okay, so this would be an upside down triangle. The next step is to just imagine the shape in your mind and then play it without having to even draw it out. As they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Or in this case, a picture is worth quite a few numbers in a tab, maybe not 1,000. To make this exercise the most effective, play these shapes all the way up and down the harmonica, starting from each hole. And as your playing gets more advanced, including bends and overblows, your shapes will get more elaborate, but all the same principles still apply. And it's still much easier to remember using your visual mental capacities because your memory is connected to your visual cortex, rather than trying to memorize a huge string of numbers on a tab. Now, one recommendation I have before attempting to do this is to pick a note layout, design, and stick with it. There's no right way to visualize the harmonica note layout. Each one has its own strengths and weaknesses. For example, here are 3 common ways of visualizing all the notes on your diatonic harmonica. The first design puts all the bends in the middle. The second puts all the bends on the outside. And the third puts all the bends below the exhales and inhales. And hey, some people prefer to visualize the inhales on the top row instead of the exhales. Like I said, it doesn't really matter as long as it works for you and you're able to ingrain it into your mental imagery. And once you've done this and mastered the acronym hacks that I covered in the last hack, you will literally never get lost again when soloing or improvising. Hack number 6. Learn how to identify intervals and chord progressions by ear. If a painter needs to know their colors and a builder needs to know their measurements, a musician, and especially a harmonica player, needs to know their intervals. Musical intervals are the distance between any 2 pitches or notes, and each distance has a name. Without the intervals, you're always guessing and flying melodically blind. Now, learning intervals takes time and energy. It's not a couple days job, that's for sure, but when you do put in the time, the dividends are massive. Every melody is made up of a string of notes, in other words, a string of intervals. And hearing intervals allows you to understand what's going on, where you are, how far you've jumped, where you're going, whether you're going up or down in pitch, and a whole slew of other useful musical applications. Intervals are a musician's essential way of navigating melody and harmony. And once you can identify melodic intervals by ear, you will also be able to identify chord progressions too, or at least that'll be the beginning of you being able to do that. From smallest to largest within an octave, the most common and useful intervals that you should learn to identify quickly by ear are unison, minor second, major second, minor third, major third, perfect fourth, tritone, perfect fifth, minor sixth, major sixth, minor seventh, major seventh, and octave. There are, of course, other intervals beyond an octave, and there are also things like quarter tones, but for the most part, if you learn these ones, that will be plenty. Now, it takes more time than we have right now in this masterclass for me to teach you these intervals, but there are some great websites like tonedear.com that can help you get started. And the aim is to be able to hear an interval and be able to name it within a couple of seconds. Just like if somebody flashed you a color with a flashcard and you'd be able to just be like green, yellow, red, etc. Now, one common method of learning intervals uses popular songs that start with each interval, and you learn to sing them and hear them in different keys until you can replicate the interval or recognize it just by itself without having to hear the whole first phrase of that song. You can just Google music interval songs and you'll actually find a list of common tunes that start with each of these intervals on multiple websites. There are other effective methods of learning intervals as well that you can look up. Once you can identify single note intervals, the next crucial step to develop as a harmonica player is to be able to identify chord progressions, which are harmonic intervals with multiple moving notes. Being able to identify chord progressions is super important because one of a harmonica player's main jobs is to solo over chord progressions, particularly guitar and piano. If you can identify by ear that this is a 1-4-5 or a 2-5-1 or a 1-6-5-4, you will be way more comfortable jamming, sitting in, and all sorts of other applications. If you can't, you'll always feel confused and probably you'll sound that way when you play. You need to start listening to and researching the world's most common chord progressions. Even if you just memorize the sound of the world's top 20 progressions, there are literally thousands of songs written with them, so you'll still be way ahead of the pack. I recommend using resources like Band in a Box, YouTube, and iReal Pro, and there are other ear training websites as well and programs to start really cracking into chord progression recognition. Once you can identify intervals reliably and consistently by ear, as well as chord progressions, an astonishing set of new skills will emerge for you. You'll be able to figure out melodies in different positions more easily, follow and improvise over chord progressions, transcribe melodies by ear, pick out arpeggios and scales by ear, understand how melodies are made and how different songs relate to each other melodically, be more comfortable picking up harmonicas with different tunings, identify what key songs are in without having to look it up, and you can just use one reference note, identify scales as they are present in melodies, riffs, and solos, and so much more. As you can see, I cannot stress the importance enough of learning your intervals by ear so that you can identify them, and it's going to help with everything. This brings me to the final hack of this mini masterclass. Hack number 7, learn how to use a DAW and record yourself. First of all, if you're unfamiliar, a DAW or DAW is a digital audio workstation that allows you to record, edit, and manipulate audio. Apple computers come with GarageBand built in, and there are free programs like Cakewalk, which you could also download from the internet. Logic Pro X is a great option for Mac, and Pro Tools is the best option for Windows if you have the budget. There are also a slew of other programs like Fruity Loops, Adobe Premiere, Ableton, Cubase, Transcribe, and a bunch of other options. Now, learning to use DAWs has many advantages. For one, it allows you to dissect your own playing by recording yourself and listening back. When you're practicing, it's difficult to listen to all of the nuances of your playing because you're focused on executing the technique. When you record, you get to hear how others hear you, which is an invaluable way of improving. You could do this easily on your phone with voice memos or a similar app. However, a DAW offers you a slew of other very useful tools that allow you to dissect, slow down, pitch shift, repeat, loop, make markers, write notes, form arrangements, and a bunch of other stuff. You don't have to become an expert per se, but even if you learn a few basics, you can speed up the rate at which you learn songs drastically, and your ear will get better from listening back closely to what you recorded and reflecting on your mistakes and what you did well. Another great advantage of a DAW is the use of backing tracks and having the ability to record and import guitar or piano chord progressions into it to play over. You can also record over a harmonica song. For example, if you wanted to play Piano Man, you could import the audio and you could record your version over it and see how well it matches. Recording also acts as a nice bridge between practicing and performing. When the red recording light is on, it just adds an extra bit of pressure, even though no one else in the room is there and you could delete and re-record as many times as you want. There's just something about the feeling of being recorded that makes you tighten up your playing ever so slightly. Because DAWs also have plugins, they also allow you to experiment with tone. You may live in an apartment where it's not appropriate to play through an amp, or maybe your amp doesn't have a headphone jack. On a DAW, you can explore a limitless palette of tones, amp sims, pedals, plugins, and other effects to craft your own signature harmonica sound. In summary, a DAW acts as your own little playground, audio sketchbook, feedback tool, and sounding board for self-assessment, enjoyment, creativity, song learning, jamming, and beyond. You'd be amazed how fun it is to actually use one once you get over the technical hump of learning the basics. Who knows? You might even end up writing your own songs, recording them, and releasing them like a real, bona fide harmonica artist. So there you have it, 7 underused, wildly effective harmonica hacks. I hope this was highly informative and that you take the time to really incorporate all of what I laid out here in this mini masterclass. You may have noticed that many of these tips aren't even directly about your harmonica playing specifically per se, but rather about developing musical, theoretical, and technical skills that will translate into much better playing over time. Even if you spend a year or two getting all this down pat, your harmonica playing will be exponentially better for the rest of your life. Now, because you put your trust in me and you actually finished watching this masterclass, I have a special bonus gift for you. I'd like to invite you to book a 45-minute, totally free, personalized harmonica Zoom consultation with me. Going through my masterclass on your own is a good way to improve your harmonica skills, but what I want to do is actually help you map out the best strategy for your specific goals and dreams. I've done this with hundreds of satisfied students in the past, and it's one of my great joys to help people like yourself tap into an endless well of creativity. Somewhere on this page, you are going to see a scheduling form where you and I can book a day and time that works for you, where we can have a free Zoom consultation. We're going to analyze your current harmonica skills, and you'll leave with a bunch of valuable, actionable tips to supercharge your playing. If you're really serious about mastering harmonica, this should be a no-brainer for you. Now, as an experienced and busy professional, I usually charge a decent sum of money for something like this, but once again, this is an additional gift for those rare individuals like yourself who actually completed my masterclass, who I know are dedicated to really leveling up their skills. I want to help you learn exactly whatever it is you need to make leaps and bounds in your playing with. And the only way to do that is with direct one-on-one feedback. If you get a lot of value out of our call, which I'm sure you will, we will also see if you're a good fit for my 4-week harmonica mastery program, which is a one-of-a-kind transformative month of one-on-one attention that will skyrocket your playing beyond what you ever thought possible. So, go ahead and book a consultation, and I look forward to seeing you and helping you out on the call.